Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very special pod. It's a live pod, live on YouTube. It's episode 6 of the season, and it's a chip special. And I've got a couple of very special FFUKers with me to go through this and have a chat about the chips in particular and see where we're at. I've got the reigning champion, the FFUK champion, Bakes, Paul Baker. How are you doing, Bakes?
Yeah, I'm very well, thank you, Chris. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Thanks for joining us. And I've also got from down under, Damo. How are you doing?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having us on. Looking forward to it.
And that's Damo O'Neill. So you should recognise them from the league. We'll get to where they're sitting in the league in a bit. But yeah, this episode we're going to look at the chips in particular, and in particular we've got a new chip to discuss. So we'll get straight underway and let's start talking about the new chip. So the new chip is called the Assistant Manager. So before we even have a discussion, I thought I'd just go through how it works. So it's a brand new chip. It's once activated, it lasts for 3 game weeks. Really importantly, you can't play another chip during that time. So one of the things we're going to discuss later is how that affects our planning. There's a cost to this chip. You have to buy a manager, and that cost is anywhere between 0.5 and 1.5, and that comes out of your squad budget, so you have to allocate for that. You can then change your manager. So if anyone's still keeping up with this, well done, because I had to read this a few times. So that you can then change your manager from game week to game week, but that does cost a transfer, a free transfer or a -4, depending on how you do it. But the first selection of your manager is free of charge, for want of a better word. And it also counts towards your 3 assets per club. So it's called 3 assets per club slot, which is obviously, so that's very pertinent for Liverpool, because if you have 3 Liverpool players, you can't then get on a slot as your manager. So how do they then score points? So depending on which manager you, actually, I think one of the things that's a little bit confusing about this chip is it's not really about a manager. It's about picking a team. You pick a team. And you score points based on their performance. So if they win, you get 6 points. If they draw, you get 3 points. If they lose, you get 0 points. For every goal the team scores, you get a point. For a clean sheet, you get +2 points. So that's the basic scoring. And then they've just thrown in something extra just to make it even more complicated. If there is a team 5 places above you at the beginning of the game week, you get extra 5 points for a draw, an extra 10 points for a win. So those are massive amounts of points over 3 game weeks. We've seen kind of scores of 30, 40, 50, 60 plus. Possible, whether we can get that or not. So I think the first thing I'm going to just come to you both and ask is, what's your reaction to the chip? What do you think about it? Damo first.
Yeah, cheers, Chris. I actually don't mind it. I think the fundamental structure of it is a little bit flawed, how they've implemented it. For instance, I don't think you should have to use your budget, or they should have given you additional budget with such late notice. However, I think it provides a real opportunity. You hear a lot of talk about it's going to maybe punish the less engaged managers. I would actually disagree. I think it gives people who are less engaged, who haven't been performing as well, more of an opportunity to just completely. It's a game changer. It gets them right back into climbing up the leagues. Like, for instance, if you had David Moyes last week, just for 1 week alone, he got 19 points. So that's an incredible return. And I think it presents a real opportunity for this particular game week as well, because there is a lot of focus on the, the what you call it, the league bonus, the table bonus for winning, which I will be drawn to too. But never even mind winning, even a draw is worth almost the same amount of points as a win. So the table bonus for a draw, I mean. And I think, for instance, Everton would have a real chance of drawing with Liverpool. A 1-1 draw there could be, 10, 11 points on that game alone. Throw in the Leicester game at home, which I would also expect them to win. And again, you could be looking at 20 points, depending on goals scored, for Moyes in this double game week. So yeah, it is good, but I think it could have done with some more tweaking. And like you say, using a transfer to move managers around, as well as there's a few penalties in there. You get penalised a bit on how you operate around it. But that's my initial reaction when I'm looking at it for like a double game week. What do you think, Bakes?
I like it. I've liked it since the outset. I like the fact that it gets us to think a little bit differently about it. So we're thinking about a team rather than a player, and I do like that. I think you're right. I think I think what we'll find as it gets used over the next few weeks is that there are flaws with it and things that could be tinkered with. So I fully expect them to come back next season with it again, maybe with some tweaks to the rules and the way it works. I like it, and it's making our chip strategies more complicated, which gives us a this evening. But I think it's going to put the onus really on planning out, the second half of the season, or the last third of the season, I guess. A little bit more carefully maybe than we've had to in the past, just because it's that 3-week window lasts for is the absolute key component of the assistant manager, and the thing that will kind of make how well it works for people.
Yeah, and I tried to think as well. I was like, well, if I was doing it, what would I do different? That kind of way. And I was thinking the reason they couldn't have launched it maybe at the very start is how could you have had a table bonus, for example, when everyone's on the same points? So that's week one kind of out of it. But I guess if it was launched in the off season with the advance notices coming, maybe in game week 3 or something like that, would help if they're going to keep it going next year. Because let's face it, it won't be a surprise chip anymore if they're going to maintain it. And then the second thing, I think it's just a bit hard on the structure of a squad when you're limited to those 3. I think they could have allowed, like, say, if you're putting in slot, you could have had your 3 Liverpool players plus slot. I think making you sell a player potentially, which a lot of teams would have, it is a little bit hard. But we'll see how it plays out, and it'll certainly shake things up a bit. So if you're up at the higher end of the table, such as yourself, I'd be a bit more like, but for people like myself that want a little bit of a punt, it adds a nice dynamic to everything.
What about you, Chris? What do you reckon?
So I think at first I was a bit annoyed because it's overly complicated. It moves away from what FPL is, which is picking players. As you say, it moves that away to picking a team, which I wasn't that comfortable with. But anything where I think, the more you research something, the more work you do, the more you might get out of it. I'm all for. So that's fine. It feels to me like there was all these options they could have gone for, and they went for the most complex, which is really unlike them, because normally they like to simplify things. And I get that, it's a game where they want maximum kind of involvement, maximum numbers of players. They don't want to make it complicated, but this feels to me like it is a little bit complicated. And one of the purposes of this video is just to give anyone in the FF UK League hopefully a little bit more of an idea about how it works. And as you say, I think they'll change it slightly for next season. I don't see it, and unless it's a disaster and the game crashes or something. But I think they'll come back with it next season, maybe slightly tweaked, as you say. I can see it being a second half of the season chip, because I think you need the positions, like Damo said. You can't really have it at the beginning of the season, because it could be really easy to get. Let's say Chelsea lost their first 2 games of the season. You could find that you get a run of 3 games where they're playing not very good teams and they're all 5 places above them. So I think, it will be end of the season. But I think perhaps the next thing for us to look at is how the sort of lay of the land, the rest of the season, as we think it's going to pan out, before we start getting into sort of the nitty gritty of what we're thinking. So we're on the precipice. We're on the eve of a double game week, the first of the season, I think. And it's Liverpool involved, so it's a big one. Liverpool and Everton with a double. So that's 24. We know as well, in all likelihood, there'll be a double in 33 and there'll be a double in 36. This is all out of Ben Krellin's mind, which is about the most reliable when it comes to this kind of thing. There is a very slim chance of doubles in 25 and 37, but the double in 25 is like a 1% chance, and the 37 one is like a 2 or 3% chance. So I'm not going to worry about them in terms of planning. If they happen, fine. But if
it requires Spurs to be going a long way in multiple competitions, doesn't it?
Exactly. So it's very unlikely. Yeah, let's be honest. The other thing we really have to factor in with all this planning is the blanks. So we know there's going to be 2 blanks. We've got the teams that play in the Carabao Cup final, which is at the moment likely to be Newcastle and Liverpool. So their games will be off that week. And then we've got the 34 blanks, which are around the FA Cup semis, I think. Is that right?
Yeah.
So those are the 2 kind of blanks. They're not as big as they were in previous seasons. The doubles aren't going to be as big as they were in previous seasons. So and we've got this extra chip now, which is a 3-game week chip. So the note I've put underneath, if you've got all your chips, which I think all 3 of us have got all our chips, apart from the first wild card. Yeah. So if you've got all your chips there, assistant manager, triple captain, bench boost, wild card, the second wild card, and the free hit, that's 7 game weeks. You're going to be using chips until the end of the season. One idea, my first thought was when this happened was, right, 31, I play a chip and I just blitz it to the end of the season, 31, 32, all the way to the end, using a chip every week. Because you've got a blank there where you can use the free hit, and everything else can be used in a double or a single, obviously. That was my actual first thought. And then I think, well, maybe actually you should target these doubles coming up right now. So I'd be really interested to hear what your initial thoughts were, whether they've changed. But you don't have to sort of tie yourself down to what you're doing, but just maybe sort of more general thoughts, how you're thinking. So Damo, where are you at in terms of a plan or sort of overall thoughts?
Yeah, well, in terms of my team, like I'm struggling a bit really to get out a bit of a rut since we last did this video. You know, I was doing very good. I was very happy with my team's performance. But just recently, in the last 7 or 8 game weeks, I've been hovering around the 1 million to 1.5 million overall rank. You know, a couple of missed out on that big Salah captain haul when he went Palmer and he blanked. And I because of that, it's starting me. I've got to think a little bit different than maybe what everyone else was doing. Having said that, I was kind of lining up this double and I went triple Liverpool and I have blown my budget as well. So I'm actually going to go with Salah captain in this. And we know Bournemouth's a very strong side this year and we're hearing a lot about it. But having said that, since Bournemouth have returned to the Premier League, Liverpool have played them 17 times and beaten them 14 times. And Bournemouth have had a good team now recently for a couple of years. And so don't forget there's some caveats in there as well. Do you remember that famous, I think it was 9-0, where Liverpool absolutely smashed Bournemouth and
is that the one where Salah blanked?
Yeah, completely blanked and loads of so I mean, it's just nature of the game, right? You try and give yourself the best chance of an ideal outcome, but you can't get too upset about the actual what happens because we're into predicting the future game, but we're all guessers at it at the end of the day. And so I'm going to have to, I think, put my triple captain on Salah this week because what I often ask myself when I'm stuck on a decision, would I get more frustrated with the outcome, i.e. Salah does perform and I didn't triple captain him, then I assumed he wouldn't, or he might only get a small return. And yes, I was right. And you don't play your triple captain. So the low averages are over 2 games. Everton are not a strong team. And I'd have been more concerned about him playing a Sean Dyche Everton, which would have been pure part of us, than Moyes, who I think is a better manager and is not a bad appointment for Everton and will do good things with him. But I just don't think he'd structure them in the same way. And let's face it, that's what got Dyche sacked, was Everton just playing such bland, boring defensive football. And Bournemouth, on the other hand, they'll give up a few chances. They could well beat Liverpool, but if they did beat Liverpool, I don't see it being a 1-0. It could be a 3-2 or something like that. And in a triple captain, all we're concerned is about Salah scoring as opposed to the actual results, right?
Yeah.
But having said all that, if I had, and I just don't have the budget, I actually think the play in this game, I will really like an assistant manager on David Moyes. You know, I think there's opportunity there for him to get a result against Liverpool, even a 0-0 or a 1-1 would get him 10 points alone from that fixture. I could see them beating Leicester, maybe a 1-0, 2-1, something like that. Before you know it, you could be on 20 points, 25 points alone just from this game week on Moyes, and you still got 2 game weeks to play, which is Palace and Man United. Again, they don't have the table bonus at the moment, but I would expect Palace and Man United to win 1 or 2 of their fixtures in this period as well. I mean, Palace, so and then the table bonus could come into play. And if it doesn't, you could then again look at how you've done in those week or 2 and make a transfer out of somebody that's got a more reliable fixture, or again table bonus as well. So yeah, I say, even just talking about it now, teasing it out, I think this is a lovely curveball of a chip. It's provided a lot of opportunity, and yeah, it's going to shake things up. So I'm excited about it, to be honest.
Okay, and at the moment you're.
What about you, Bakes? What are you planning for this?
Yeah, go for it, Bakes.
So I'm on a triple captain at the moment for this game week, for game week 24. When the assistant manager when it first got announced, and there was already chat at that time that 24 was likely to be a double, that was likely to be when the postponed Liverpool Everton game is going to be rearranged for. My immediate thought was, play it on that, and play it on slot, because I know there's a lot of interest in the table bonus, but actually the frequency with which a team even draws, let alone beats a team that's 5 places above them, it's actually incredibly rare. And it's not the way I play the game. I play the game by percentages. I'm a template fantasy football player, so I've got no real interest in the table bonus. I just want the best manager who's going to win 3 or 4 games. That's really all I'm interested in. So I was interested in putting on slots, but then I've kind of, and for kind of the same reasons, I've kind of moved away from it, just because nobody else seems to be playing their assistant manager this early. Everybody else seems to have moved away from it, and I don't want to be the guinea pig, basically, to see how this works. I want other people to be the guinea pig. So I kind of moved away from the assistant manager for that reason. So, but then I've you can't see it. I've got a piece of paper in front of me where I've been sort of mapping out the last game, all the remaining game weeks of the season, and just putting in where all the doubles and the blanks are likely to fall, as you've been talking about, Chris. And now that we've got this assistant manager, as you say, we've got, 7 game weeks where we've got to assign chips.
It's a lot.
There's not actually that many places where you'd want them to do. And when you start by thinking, well, free hit, you've really got to put that on a blank traditionally. Triple captain goes on a double. You really want to do your bench boost on a double. And if you can, wild card into that bench boost on that double. You start playing that through towards the back end of the season. And really, then it's like, well, if I don't play my triple captain now, when am I going to play it? And there's not an obvious alternative. And that's really why I've ended up on triple captain now. It's just because if I don't play it now, I'm not really sure when I am going to play it.
And it's Salah. I suppose that's the other thing, isn't it?
We've got Salah, who's in form. Yeah. You've got, 2 teams who, Bournemouth are playing well at the moment. Everton aren't great. You'd feel like, there's points in there for Salah. So I kind of feel like that'll. I mean, triple captains are. It's, for me, it's probably the least strong of all of the chips anyway. So I don't mind pushing it out on this and seeing how it goes. Do you want me to go through kind of the rest of the plan, or do you want to?
Well, we'll get to that, I think. I want to just, your initial reaction, really. And then it's interesting because you mentioned about you don't think many people will use the assistant manager yet. Obviously, was this the first week we can use it? Or was it last week? This is the first week. So obviously, that you would be an early adopter to go now. But it was interesting because I asked a poll in the WhatsApp group about a week ago, I think, saying what chip are you planning to use, or if you're planning to use one next week. And almost everyone came back saying, I'm either not using a chip or I'm using the TC, choosing the triple captain. Not one person said they're using assistant manager. And I don't know if that's a little bit of, like you say, don't want to be the guinea pig, bit of fear of becoming, being the first person, or just a bit of, I really don't know what I'm doing yet. It's too much to nail my color, to nail my decision to the mast, or whatever the phrase is. As I say, there's all these weeks to cover. And it feels to me like the triple captain is easier to play this week because it's double Liverpool, it's Salah. We know all that. Plus, we can have the treble Liverpool because we're not getting slots. So I see how it's happened. I do think it'd be interesting to look after this week. I'd imagine the assistant manager outscores the triple captain over the double. Just over that. I think
the assistant manager is a more powerful chip. 100%.
Oh, for sure.
You'll get more return out of the assistant manager, I think. Yeah, absolutely.
And I had a look. Let's go to the next slide, which is a fixture ticker. I had a look earlier at which teams might have little runs of, like you say, we were talking about the 5 positions earlier, and the teams that have got runs like that are Southampton, Ipswich, and Leicester, pretty much. West Ham is the only other one that you could look at. Maybe they've got a little run. Wolves, Bournemouth, Liverpool, with 2 teams above them that you could look at. But I'm with Bakes. I think I'm gonna go with either Slot or maybe Arteta, but I'd need Arsenal to show a bit more form. Or the other one I do think is worth a look is if you can get City at the moment, because they're probably about to go on a run. I'm guessing. That's what they usually do. As soon as I see some form from City, I'm thinking if you get that run like you've got there, Brighton, Leicester, Man United, that would do me. Those 3, 29, 30, 31. They play as well in 29, which is a big one. So yeah, I think I would love to play the assistant manager chip this week, but I think it's probably prudent just to get an extra Liverpool, get your 3 Liverpool in. But it's interesting what you said, Dave, about Everton. I hadn't really considered them, but you're right. The Moyes factor back with them, and they've got a bit of, new manager bounce. They're certainly looking more attacking than they were, but their fixtures are horrible, I think, because of their Everton, and they never look like they've got good fixtures. So it's tricky. Yeah. It is tricky.
And do bear in mind, that would be kind of caveat for somebody that is, lower mid ranking, where you're trying to do something a bit different. Like if I was either you guys, I wouldn't be doing it either. I'd be playing the safe option. You don't need to take a risk. You're just kind of ring fencing around what people around you might do. But if you're lower down, that's why I think this chip is good, because it's kind of like a roll of the dice. It's a bit of fun. It's a bit of a gamble, and that's why it's nice. I mean, you heard so many this year. I don't remember a year where there was so much noise about triple captain being played early, because we knew there was going to be less double game weeks because of how they moved the FA Cup fixtures around. So if you remember at the start of the season, it might have been game week 3. A lot of Haaland captains. A lot of people went for Haaland when he was Southampton at home. And it seemed a lot of people, but
switching too,
Ipswich, yeah. And I remember hearing so many people seem to be playing it. But earlier, before we came on, I was just looking at the dossier and having an analysis of our own league, and it's actually only 20% of people have played the triple captain, which sounds like a lot. But then that means 8 out of 10 people still have their triple captain. 8 out of 10 managers in our league. That's still a lot, So I think this week we're going to see some high usage. Like probably that could go down by half. See a lot of people put it on Salah.
I think maybe even higher than that. Maybe if there's 20% of the league is kind of 40 people leaving 180
I can see 100
I reckon at least 100 are going
maybe more.
TC. Yeah, I reckon.
And as to your point, Bex,
behind, do you?
Yeah, like what you're saying about the assistant manager chip, where you're still kind of going, what is it? It's just easier to just go, I'm just going to play triple captain. Let's see how this plays out. I'll watch what those guys did. And, before you know it, there's 150 captains on Salah. And then if you don't do it, and you do go the other way, and Salah even gets 2 goals, before you know it, that you're sinking even further down the league.
That's the other thing. I mean, if you don't triple captain him this week, you're going to be wanting him to blank, essentially.
Yeah.
His EO
is going to be over 200 for sure. Yeah. And whenever that happens, it's not a nice place to be if you're not in that group with the 300%. I think it's really interesting. Okay, let's sort of look at it more in terms of our teams then. We can come back to the fixture ticker if we need to, but I just got one fact that I found before we do this, because the first game that Liverpool play is Bournemouth, and they've got they've been impressing all of us. The last pod we did with Ronnie, I chatted to him in detail about Bournemouth, and we talked about Areola and how well he was doing, and their players, and Zabani we talked about, and this guy Huijsen has come in and looks absolutely fantastic as well. They come in 10 games ago, and their defensive record is better than any other team, including Liverpool, including City and Arsenal, than anyone. So that is a real worry when you're looking at basically it means that the Everton game becomes really important. But I just think even with that, I don't see why we wouldn't. But I saw that fact earlier, and I thought, oh my goodness, I mean, that does sort of imply that we shouldn't be doing it, but there's just no option.
The flip side of that is one of the reasons they haven't lost is they haven't played the best team in Europe.
That's true.
The opposition they've come up against. But having said that, being a little bit cheeky there, they've even performed well against the better teams. So I think they've got a fantastic manager. They are good.
We somehow got a draw and a win against them, Chelsea, this season, and both times they outplayed us. So they're a really good team, really impressive. Okay, let's. I just wanted to have that in the back of our minds when we get to our next discussion. So we're going to get to Bakes' team now. So you're 4th in FFUK, relentless, Bakes. In your so this could be a double that you're going
for the double.
It was a red arrow. I was 2nd, so I am down to 4th.
Okay, well. Thanks for joining us down in 4th. So, do you want to go through your team for anyone listening, because we're going to have this as a podcast as well, and then we'll have a chat about where you're at.
Yeah, I mean it's a heavy template team because that's the way I play. So I've got Sells in goal. I've got a random 4.0 goalkeeper, making up the numbers. Defence, Robinson, Alexander-Arnold, Hall, and I've got Gabriel and Harwood-Bellis as my 4 million defender. Midfield, Palmer, Gordon, Salah, Rogers. Currently, for this current game week, I've got Ahmad on the bench, and then up front, Wood, Gakpo, and Isak. So I've got all the essential players that you need to have. I've got my triple Liverpool for the double, and the triple captain currently on Salah.
And that's
problems ahead for game week 29, but we can talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, that's if Newcastle and Liverpool get to the final, obviously you've got six players there.
But I think most people are going to have at least 5.
Yeah, and you wouldn't mind selling a couple of those Newcastle ones in between now and then, probably.
No, I mean, Gordon to Bomo's on the cards for next week.
Exactly. So no, that's interesting. I think you've probably got the strongest treble Liverpool, the strongest 3. You know, Trent, obviously, Salah, and Gakpo. I think if you could handpick. Have you had them for a while, or did you just get them in recently?
No, both very recently. So Gakpo's only come in this week, so I missed out on this haul last week. And Alexander-Arnold I brought in last week, so yeah, only very recently.
So you've already made your moves this week. You've brought in Gakpo this week.
Brought in Gakpo this week, yeah, to get my because I've been on the fence. I had enough money if I needed to go to bring in slots if I wanted to, so I wanted to keep that option open. But after what Gakpo did, it was, and I'd sort of set my. I pretty much decided, no, I'm going to go 3 Liverpool and triple captain. It had to be Gakpo. So jettison Mateta, who'd been doing really well for me actually, but it was the obvious move.
Yeah, I mean, you could have lost Wood, but which would have been more punty. But yeah,
it's too dangerous. Too many people own him.
Okay. Oh yeah, I forget. It's template. So the only other thing there, perhaps that stands out, is you're playing Rogers over Ahmad. I think that's possibly one where people might think.
Did you change your mind? Was that after his hat trick? Did you flip that around?
No. I've been on Roger. This is my bus team. I've been on Rogers the whole time. Wolves are a weaker team for me than Crystal Palace. So I mean, I could easily flip them around if I wanted to, but
it's a coin toss.
Yeah, he has that. I mean, he was brilliant last night. And you've got Gabriel on the bench. I think in the reverse fixture he scored and got a clean sheet. Gabriel, so he got, I think, 15 points.
That's helping me. I mean, like I say, Gabriel might come in. I don't really fancy him against City. City are just warming up nicely now. So.
City have turned the corner.
City will score. Saliba's probably out, isn't he? Still?
Oh no, he's back in the week.
He came out.
Was back in the week? Okay, so maybe he's back.
So maybe that's he'll be back.
But yeah, I'd probably. Generally, my feeling would always be whoever your most expensive players are, play them, and then just pick your least expensive players for who you put on the bench. But I just feel like this is one of those weeks where I just fancy Robinson and Hall and their fixtures over his.
Fair enough. I mean, Robinson's been outstanding as well, so you could easily get a return from him. Okay, let's have a look. Let's go to Damo's team. And what about before we do that? So, Bakes, looking forward, what's your sort of next kind of plans? What are you looking towards? Are you sort of building to, is 29 the next focus after this? Or
29 is the next focus, yeah, because that's the blank. Likely Liverpool and Newcastle will blank, which will mean also that Crystal Palace and Aston Villa blank as well. So it's not just those 6, actually, it's also Rogers, so I've got 7. So I need to think about what I'm going to do with that. So free hits an option. My current plan is to try and roll through it with transfers. But that'll be, all my transfers between now and then will be planning for 29. So I can roll through that and then build to the double game week in 33.
And I think
I need to get a lot of those players back again.
I know.
Because they'll be the ones doubling.
They will, yeah. And I think we'll find out about that next week because of the second legs of those games are Tuesday, Wednesday next week, I think. So keep an eye on those. Right, let's move to your team, Damo. So as you said, you're not having quite as successful a season as Bakes, but still a respectable position. 100th in the league. You can still have a good finish to the season.
Yeah.
So if you just want to go through your team quickly for anyone listening.
Yeah, for anyone listening. So I got Sanchez in goal, home to West Ham. Cannot wait to get rid of him. Being very disappointing. Alexander-Arnold, Virgil, Van Dijk in defence along with Robinson. Then midfield of Ease, Salah, Palmer, I've went with Ahmad in my decision at home to Palace
Interesting. Yeah.
versus Rodgers, and Isak would Wissa up front with a bench of the now dropped Fabianski. Otherwise, that's a bit of a concern. Rodgers, Gabriel, and Wout Fass in on the bench. Again, I'd come to that same conclusion as Beggs with regard to Gabriel. Don't like benching him. However, what's the most likely outcome in 2 games against City, that he keeps clean sheets in both and scores in both, or one or the other? I think the most likely outcome is probably a 2-pointer there. And if we're wrong, that's it is what it is. I made my moves last week in advance of the double, so I brought in Trent and Wissa. Wissa was the enabler there for the funds, and that was probably recency bias after having Van Dijk against Brentford. I could see that when they both keep clean sheets, if Trent does anything else, he'll also attract the bonus there. So he gets the assist and the bonus. And I could see I was losing ground. So really the issue was the right play was obviously I got rid of Nicholas Jackson. And I that was a hit last week. And I thought Ipswich was as close as you'll get to a banker for a clean sheet and nice returns. So I was very frustrated then when you see it was in Cisco, who should have had a red, who actually set up that equaliser. He gets a red card there. There's no way Liverpool conceding, and it's a different outcome. And I get my hit paid for it. It wasn't to be. I would have liked to have Gakpo. It would have been an easy transfer, and I wouldn't have had to take a hit. But I'd made my bed by backing Van Dijk probably about 4 or 5 game weeks ago, and needing to rectify that by bringing in Trent. I could see going forward what I'd do is Van Dijk will probably go after the Liverpool game, and that'll give me a different kind of structure. But yeah, I still feel it's a relatively strong setup. I'm probably actually going to roll this week. I mean, I don't.
Wow.
After Sanchez's wild roamings against City, I actually wouldn't be surprised to finally see him dropped. But the way it's been with keepers this year, even if he doesn't play, 2 points here, no points, it's not a huge loss. And ironically, after this week, I'll probably be looking at Kepa. The Bournemouth keeper, I think, is as good a shot as anyone. It gives me some defensive cover there. So I could see myself moving out of Sanchez and possibly Ease and going to. I did actually play with the thoughts of taking another hit and bringing in Kluivert, benching him, and putting Kepa on the bench, or Kepa in there for Sanchez. But I think I've taken enough hits this season, and I just need to leave it be. And like I say, with at home is a bit of a wild card, trying to get on him early before everyone else, because I can see now the interest in Bournemouth is ramping up again.
Yeah, I mean, Wissa and Buemo are going to be very, very popular as of going forward, really, from now. No, I think that's interesting. You've got the double defense, which is you're looking at clean. You want cleans rather than goals, but also you want goals from Salah. The other thing with Trent and Virgil, you get a goal from either of them and a clean sheet, and you're laughing. So no, I like the setup there. And you're still backing, you spent a lot of money on Liverpool assets. I think it's really interesting. You've got Ahmad over Rodgers, which is obviously the opposite of Bakes, which shows how close it is as a decision. Did the having Eze as well influence that, or did you think like that game's going to be full of goals, or do you just take individuals?
Look, I just don't like Man United at all recently, and again this season. And I was very close a few weeks ago when it was to bringing in Eze or Ahmad, and I went with Eze, and Ahmad went and got that hat trick against Southampton. And you're like, oh. So I then brought him in the next game week to rectify that. And again, with Man United players, if they do start to hit a bit of form, because they have such popularity and they're so well supported, they quickly become a big part of the game. So you can lose ground quickly there. But like I say, the reason I asked about Rodgers is this is before his hat trick yesterday, and I'm like, oh no, maybe what have I done? If ever I'm on the fence, I'll always back the home player. I like home. Okay. And Villa are a little bit mixed. I do think Villa are obviously a better team this year. Rodgers is a very good player. Personally, haven't seen enough of Ahmad to prefer him as a player over Rodgers. But yeah, it's a coin toss.
Yeah, no, well, it's interesting. You've got a few different players, but there is definitely a template. I understand your feelings about Sanchez. Trust me, it's a lot worse if you support the team.
As a Chelsea fan, yeah. And look, I take some comfort. I mean, I think on the day I've got myself and Beggs have 9 of the same starting 11 nearly. So it's only really Wissa and Van Dijk are the only two different. We're both playing triple captain. You could put Rodgers and Gabriel into that team. So. Yeah. There's hope for me, that's what I'm trying to say.
But that's what about yourself? That's why as well the chips become so important, because that is all that we have left. Although everyone sort of tries to save them, You do well with one of your chips, and that's what we're all looking for.
Changes things around.
So okay, so we'll go to me. I'm the last. So we've got my team here as well. So 27th at FFUK, which is respectable enough. I've been kind of hovering on the first page most of the season, but not much higher than 27th. I've got some money in the bank. I've got a free transfer. My plan this week, I haven't made a transfer yet. So just to go through my team, I've got Raya in goal, who is a doubt at the moment, which is a bit annoying. I've got Hall, Robinson and Konate because I had to go cheap with my Liverpool option. I've got Mbeumo, Salah, Palmer, Gordon in midfield, which is about as nice as it gets, I think, at the moment. And then I've got Isak, Wood and João Pedro up top, which I'm relatively happy with. Fabianski is my backup keeper, which doesn't really help me because I don't think he's going to play either this week. Ahmad is on the bench at the moment. Kirkes is on the bench. I've been benching a lot of his points. And I've got a dead player, Mosquera, as the 15th man. So I guess the biggest difference to you guys is my lack of Trent, my lack of Virgil. I will do João Pedro to Gakpo. That is the move that has been planned all week. I was just waiting to make sure he came through the game last night.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my plan. I have, in part of me, thought about doing Wood to Gakpo because João Pedro is obviously a lot cheaper, and then I've still got some money. But I think I'm just going to use the money, get rid of Pedro. He's been frustrating me. Wood's got a couple of nice fixtures coming up. So yeah, I think I'm there as well. I am not 100% on the triple captain, but it does seem to make sense. The more you talk about it, the more you think about it. The fact that we haven't got that many game weeks left, using it in a double is always going to be better than using it in a single, even if the double's not as good as the single. And that's certainly what the situation at the moment. So it's just, you only really need one return over the two games, maybe maybe a goal and an assist over the two games, and that's like 20 points. So, or 15, 20 points. So that's all we're really asking for. As Bake said before, it's not the best chip. I'm not that worried. If it fails, it's not the end of the world, especially if everyone else is on it at the same time. I do think anyone who went Haaland in game week 2 has been laughing the rest of the time because pressure's off. I doubt Salah is going to get 17 points. It's unlikely over 2 games. He's also not quite in the form he was in earlier in the season, I'd say. I think he's just backed off a little bit.
Maybe.
And I'm as big a Salah fan as there is. So I think it's happening. Yeah, I don't really see any reason why not. So yeah, after all that chat, we're all doing the same thing. That's exciting, isn't it?
There's a little caveat as well that none of us mentioned this point, to which we've got to take care, and anyone listening should take into consideration, is the fact that it's unusual in this double game week that Liverpool have 2 more games in between the Bournemouth game and the Everton game. They have the FA Cup game, I think it's against Plymouth, which I wouldn't be too concerned. I don't see him playing that, or certainly just on the bench. But there is, of course, Spurs semi-final, which he'll definitely be playing in. And there's that, of course, brings the opportunity for tiredness and, of course, injury. But like I say, we're in the luck game.
We are in the luck game, and we will all be crossing everything we can. Yeah. I listened to a pod earlier on Planet FPL pod, and they were talking about on this day back in however many years ago. It was on this day that we had Salah and Mane both having a double game week, and at the time they were neck and neck, similar price, similar stats. And some people in the league had Salah, some people in the league had Mane, and that's up to that point. It hadn't really mattered who you had. In fact, if you had both was the answer. But in that double game week, in the first game, 16 minutes in, Mane went off with an injury, and every single person that had triple captain, that was the triple captain week. So, and Salah went on and scored 2 goals and got an assist, I think, in the double. So it was
I think it was against Bake's team, West Ham, wasn't it? I had Salah that game week, and
we always get battered by Liverpool, so yeah,
probably. No one wants to play Liverpool, Banks. Even Chelsea's struggling. We struggle against them every time. So, I think that was really useful. I hope you guys found it useful. I certainly did, and hopefully anyone watching did as well. I think we'll leave it there. We've done sort of 40 minutes. That was really good. So yeah, thanks Damo for joining, and thanks Bakes.
Not at all. My pleasure.
Cheers, thanks, and good luck for the game week.
Yeah, absolutely. And good luck to everyone watching. And if anyone's watching fancies having a go at this at some point, just drop us a note and we'll get you involved. It was always good to get new people in doing these, and we'll try and do a couple more before the end of the season. But as Damo said, good luck for the forthcoming game week. Cheers, guys.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.